I want you to get together.
Pretend to not be able to leave the circle, like, oh, you've got me, but I don't think you have any control over them unless you are filled with the Holy Spirit and have that authority. And that's essentially the only control. The true power in the world is through that. And one thing, talking about false power, I had another question from somebody on my last live stream, and they want to know, because with the rise of Gnosticism right now, it's big right now. Gnostic thinking is getting extremely prevalent in the modern age. And when we last talked 7 years ago now, I was in this truth of culture, and there was a predominant Christian faction, and then there was the Gnostic faction, and under that umbrella came New Age theosophy and all sorts of other tendrils that went down. But since coming back, I have found the Gnostics have gained a huge foothold over quote unquote truth, and their philosophies and ideologies are running rampant right now. They are seriously, people take it very seriously because people are looking for truth, are looking for answers, but we live in an age of pride that they naturally kind of gravitate towards this idea that enough knowledge and gnosis will get you the ability to save yourself. And that's kind of what a lot of people are always aiming towards, if not necessarily going down the whole demiurge route of Gnosticism, where Lucifer's the true god and our god is an evil dictator who's got us trapped in flesh prisons. So one question someone asked me is, who was Thoth exactly? Because the emerald tablets of Thoth are these things people constantly reference all the time. And I understand in your book there's this link to Hermes and Hermes Trismegistus and the serpentine cults and the occulted knowledge post-flood. Do you want to explain this history so people who might be going down that route have a true context for who he actually was?
Sure. Yeah, so you've got a few things to unpack here. So understand that, Hermes Trismegistus means three times Hermes, or three individuals at different periods in life as that mythos sort of comes together. And Thoth is a god of wisdom in the Egyptian pantheon and thought to be antediluvian. Although some people say he has a counterpart on the other side. Of course, he'd have a counterpart. Is it the same one? Probably not. It's probably another being. But so Thoth becomes a god through wisdom.
Yeah.
So it wasn't originally a god. So that's where you start to get into the connections to Enoch. And Enoch received all of this illicit knowledge from the fallen ones and the gods in polytheism. And in third book of Enoch, he has his name changed to Metatron, which is a name associated with AI and stuff like that today, and the metaverse, things like that. He actually evolves in third Enoch is not a monotheistic book. It's totally polytheistic, as second Enoch is, or at least been corrupted that way. But he is going to have his name changed in recognition of him being raised up to be angelic-like, even to the Son of God status, and taken to that whole level of being. So he becomes a god through that knowledge, is what that is saying. Very similar to Thoth. So in the traditions, you kind of have Thoth the god, you have Enoch, you have Hermes or Harmanes, who finds the pillars to the seven sacred sciences created by Enoch and takes it to Nimrod to build Babel Tower, and perhaps part of how Nimrod becomes a Gibborim, Gibber. And then you have another one that shows up later as the sort of patriarch for alchemy in Egypt. So you got two Hermes after the flood, and you've got two characters in the flood. And typically you'll see the Trismegistus with Enoch and two Hermes after the flood, or you'll have Enoch, Thoth, and one of the two Hermes after the flood. And your mind starts to go to mush a little bit first, because you got four, not three. And how do they make that work? It's because you're never really told the connection of Enoch becoming like a god in the polytheist belief system. So that means Enoch would be Thoth and that sort of understanding.
Mhm.
Now, is Enoch around after the flood? Um, maybe perhaps more as a demon spirit, but he's the son of Cain. So we don't know whether or not he's a giant
Mhm.
as to who Cain married,
Mhm.
or is he just the descendants of Adam and Cain and a human from day 6, and through the knowledge he becomes a god. So again, there's that missing pieces of information that nobody really links, but we do see that connection between Enoch becoming a god, just as Thoth becoming the god, and likely one before the flood, Hermes after the flood, immediately after he finds the 7 sacred sciences knowledge, and then later Hermes.
So,
Whichever way you define the Trismegistus, those are the different ways you'll find it out there.
so Enochian wisdom, as it's known as in the Gnostic type of thing, is
Yep.
basically the corrupted 7 sacred sciences, which come from God essentially, but were then corrupted, used, and abused for power and control by Cain's lineage. Enoch being Cain's first child, and it was obviously cults were created, religious establishments and orders were created by Enoch and Cain's lineage going down. And I do believe, obviously, we don't know when Enoch died exactly, but I know later iterations of the family took over these cults and preserved his knowledge, didn't they? So if you want to explain how that happened and what.
Yeah, so Lamech, of the lineage of Cain, and there's 2 Lamechs, just so like there's 2 Enochs.
Mhm.
And again, you have to be careful not to conflate them
Yeah.
as what the polytheists like to conflate it. And so you also, in the sons of Lamech are Tubal Cain,
Mhm.
Jabal and Jabal, and Nama, all assigned to part of the 7 sacred sciences and the arts and the crafts that they have. And so that is in the Renaissance period of a resurgence of those sciences in the time when the giants are being created. So you see the organizational structure that's coming. And the 7 sacred sciences come from Enoch, son of Cain, who takes Cain's knowledge that he learns from Adam and Eden, according to the Gnostics and the Masons and the Rosicrucians and the secret societies.
Yeah.
And Enoch takes that and puts it into 7 different disciplines
Mhm.
that we know as the 7 liberal arts today.
Mhm.
And then that this knowledge, and particularly with the knowledge coming from the fallen angels, is going to make this knowledge so valuable and powerful they don't want to share it with the mundane humans and or the Sethian line. So
Mhm.
they create mysticism, and I call it Enochian mysticism, or, the Enochian wisdom, the cult of knowledge, just as Gnosticism means knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And is a cult of knowledge. And that the secret that to develop this 7 sciences, they developed the mystery schools, which were educating the elite and did again after the flood. So the same organizational structure that crosses the flood through Hermes and Nimrod.
Mhm.
And none of the humans, the mundane, are going to get any of this education or anything like that because they don't have the bloodlines. And so, out of the mystery schools that develop the sciences, you have the secret societies developed, just like on university degrees or university campuses with degrees, which mysticism takes you up through the degrees of that knowledge.
Mhm.
You have all of these initiatory secret societies there. There are alpha houses, skull and bones. It's just part of that whole structure. And you have these rituals and black gowns like the Cathars and the Albigensians, and in terms of your graduation into a degree, like an adepthood type of thing. So you're initiated into these sciences. And the 7 sciences were created initially, and I'll let people decide for themselves how this lines up with the 7 liberal arts taught in university today. 4 major agendas. One is to lead people away from God.
Mhm.
2 is to not give God credit for anything. 3 is to slander God and degrade God, because angels don't do that. They use their demigod, spirits, offspring, and humans to do that because they know how powerful God is. And then 4, to honor their pantheon of gods that they're worshiping.
Mhm.
And Cain and Enoch, they accept the pantheon of gods and create this whole religion around them. And if you go into schools today, they're doing the same thing. They will not give God credit for anything, existence, creating anything. They like to slander God as a fable and a myth, and it's designed to lead people away. And then everything within education honors the pantheon of gods, whether it's the architecture, whether or not it is the gods being named on things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they just honor them in everything that they do. So yeah, you have the sciences that are being developed that is going to develop into the mysticism that um, is designed to what they were trying to do before the flood is to recreate immortality of the Nephilim that was taken away, which is why it's important to have that marriage with that illicit knowledge. And they're going to offer the same thing
Mm-hmm.
in the end time. They're going to offer some sort of physical immortality, either through soul sleeve transfer with clones or parts that they can add on or transhumanism. They're going to offer it that, and then they're going to connect that angelic technology to the beast system
Mm-hmm.
that is going to work interdimensionally into the multiverse that they're getting everybody prepared for in the implant system that is going to access a particle that is being searched for, like at CERN and things like that. And it's an invisible particle that's called the Atma or the Atman particle. New Age is the divine essence
Mm-hmm.
that merges with a particle that you can measure at the quantum level and is the source of all knowledge and spreads that knowledge through all dimensions, all universes, however many they are, instantaneously through quantum entanglement. So now you understand why quantum computing and AI is so important, so that they can connect you into that system that is going to do things at the quantum level, at the DNA level, at the gene level, to give you an immortality in the physical world.
Men will seek death and they will not find it, basically. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I can see it all. I mean, there's so many. Most of our modern media is retelling this story you just told, and how they're going to do it. And there's no
yeah,
one way they can do this. They can do it through transhumanist means, artificial intelligence means, quantum entanglement means.
yeah,
Every facet is being explored, and you're going to see something emerge from the current exploration within the modern sciences, which again are just a continuation of what happened before the flood. It's the
yeah,
same agenda, never stopped. It's been going through. The knowledge is the same. It's just that the application of the knowledge has been changed over millennia and time. It's been more advanced at other times, less advanced at others, depending on cataclysmic events and changes, God's intervention. All sorts of things have happened throughout history, but the agenda keeps going from a serpent cult
yeah,
perspective. And you're talking about,
yeah,
they created these religions. Sorry, I'm just going to quickly,
yeah,
but I think people get confused about what kind of religions they created exactly to take the glory away from God. And from what I've seen, the pattern seems to be, well, as long as you're worshipping the sun or the planets or stars or the earth or trees or the creation rather than the creator, they're happy. If not literally worshipping fallen angel pantheons of gods, that's fine too. That's fair game. Or worship yourself and call yourself God. We don't care. We'll pretend to be the leader of any of those religions as long as you're on
yeah,
that path. And that is
yes,
that is Gnosticism today in all its many facets. There's many ways for it to be kind of expressed, but it all has its roots in this Enoch. Basically, it all goes back to one
it,
person.
it does.
Yeah,
And it's with this religion that sort of crosses the flood.
yeah,
And at Babel is the key end time allegory we need to understand, because you have Nimrod, who's an archetypical antichrist figure over the whole rule of humankind at that time, not the giants, but humankind of the Noahites before they're dispersed.
mm-hmm.
And you have this universal religion that is imposed on them today. And that's the root word for Babylon in Revelations. It goes back to the Hebrew word Babel. It's that Babel religion. It's the Enochian mysticism from before the flood. From a secular perspective, we have Indo-Aryans and 4 or 5 groups of these Indo-Aryans, Indo-Europeans, or giants that show up after the flood, whether they survived or
Well, yeah,
recreated or both. And the religion of the original giants, and particularly as we trace that to certain aspects of a related group of the Indo-Aryans, and in this case, the dark-haired ones, but they're all part of the same group, uh, whether they escaped out of Tartarus or recreated. And that religion is Zoroastrianism.
Mm-hmm.
That shows up in Persia, and the Achaemenid kings of the Persian kings, and before where they're worshiping Zoroastrianism, and in the Hindu valley, the Indus Valley of Hinduism, it's the same religions, and so the ancient Persians and the Hindus have the same names of the gods because it's the same religion. It's just a different branch of the dark-haired giants that are worshiping this religion of the giants that crossed the flood, that was Enochian mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
Zoroastrianism is the root religion for Gnosticism. It's the root religion for Mithraism, which was the main proponent at the time of the Romans that merged into, with a lot of its imagery, to Christianity at the time of Constantine. And whether it's Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, or Gnosticism, one of the names for the god that's used in all three of these, of their head god, is the great architect of the universe, which is Lucifer, and or Hale-El, as we would understand that biblically, or as Gadrael, which may be another name for Satan's original name in the book of Enoch.
It's all essentially comparative to a dualistic view of the world. It's all dualism in its own right.
Yes.
Zoroastrianism, it's you need the good and the light to have that eternal universal balance, which we all have to find within ourselves. That kind of airy fairy way of viewing things, and it equates that Lucifer is equal to God, but in the Gnostic viewpoint, God is the evil controller and Lucifer is the freedom giver, and with the two have an interplay of reality for eternity, which creates life and the universe as we know it, or some kind of narrative that justifies the evil, basically. Like it's necessary to have bad things, because how would you know what good was without the bad type of thinking, But it's so corrupted. I'll let you go on.
It is. So it's encapsulated in the two belief systems, monotheism or polytheism. And all the different pantheons around the world are the same pantheon. It's the same religion, just with different names for the gods and some different variations on the vernacular and of the rituals, the local rituals. Is you have two different points of view, and you also have two different lenses. So as they look through this lens, whether you're monotheist or polytheist, and understand, if you're looking through a secular lens, you're looking through the polytheist lens, because they're leading you away from God and doing everything they want, just as if you were in that religion. They look at prehistory through the polytheist lens, and we shouldn't dismiss their accounts. But it's going to be different in terms of how they perceive the golden age, as they call it, or the time before the flood, as we would call it, that brought about the flood because it turned to evil, and how they perceive what happened through history, and how they perceive what the outcome of the end time will be. And that within that understanding is you have, from a monotheist version, there's good versus evil, as in the rebellious angels, but only for a time. And at the end of this age, at the end of the fig tree generation, is all of the fallen angels will go to the abyss prison. I mean, not to the abyss prison, I'm sorry, to the lake of fire, where Satan is delayed 1,000 years. He goes to the pit prison first, and then after 1,000 years to the lake of fire. And that there's an end to this good versus evil, and there's a victor. In polytheism, even though they have to counterfeit everything in monotheism, but manipulate it. So in that version, you have two powers of good and evil that never win. They're in perpetual battle throughout history that goes on forever, and that they raise Satan up to be the equal of God. They don't dismiss God completely at the depth level. They recognize him for being powerful, but they've been brainwashed by the fallen angels to believe that he's no powerful than what they are, even though the fallen angels would know differently. And so they believe that this will just go on forever. And that they also have that dualism within their religion. It really confused people, and it does a great job, because you have black magic and white magic.
Yeah.
It's the same mystical knowledge. They have good Nephilim and bad Nephilim. They both worship the same pantheon of gods. Today we would know that better, and have like black witches or evil witches and white witches. And it's there all of the time, and we know that today in their code language is the white hats and the black hats. And in this case, the white hats and the good have humankind's interest at their best, to not completely destroy them, but the end is still the same thing because that's what they intend to do. They just treat humans nicer in the meantime. The dark hats have no use for humans and would like to destroy them instantly. They have the same agenda, it's just a different way of getting there.
I want you to get together